Salute to the eternal comrade, eternal president, Comrade Kim Il Sung. And today, chat, of course, we are reading from this book right here, Kim Il Sung's With the Century. Do it like this. And then I'll go like Kim Il Sung's With the Century. We're looking at this part right here. Actually, fuck it. You probably can't see that much anyway, so I'll do it like this. Okay, we're looking at Kim Il Sung's With the Century. This is Kim Il Sung's reminiscences. This is essentially his life story. Now, see, that doesn't work like that. It's gotta be like this. Yeah, there. Because now the whole thing is on. This is Kim Il Sung's life story, as told by Kim Il Sung. Last time we kind of got the intro, the beginning of learning about his grandfather and a lot of his family. How none of them came back. The story about the gate. It got me all choked up last time. Today we're on chapter 2, My Father and the Korean National Association. G1. Aim high was my father's lifelong motto. He used to write this motto in large strokes on the walls at Sunhwa and Mungsan School, and in many other places, as well as at his home. Some of his writing still remains. And it demonstrates that he was quite good at writing with a brush. In those days, calligraphy was celebrated, and it was the fashion to obtain handwritings from renowned people and famous calligraphers and keep them in scrolls, in frames, or on screens. As a little boy, I thought that this was normal for calligraphy. My father used to hang up his handwriting without decoration in places which attracted public attention. When I was old enough to understand the world, my father began to teach me how I should love my country, saying that in order to become a patriot, I should aim high. Aim high means what it says. There is nothing extraordinary about a father who teaches his son to aim high. One cannot succeed in a venture unless one has a noble ideal and a high ambition and works tirelessly. But aim high has nothing in common with worldly preaching about personal glory or a successful career. It implies a revolutionary outlook on life, in which genuine happiness is sought in the struggle for one's country and nation, and an unbreakable revolutionary spirit to liberate the country by fighting through generations. My father told me a great deal to explain why I should have a noble aim. What he told me amounted to the history of our people's struggle against the Japanese. Once Korea was a very strong country, he said. Korea, having developed her military art, had seldom been defeated in war, and her brilliant ancient culture had spread across the sea to Japan. However, her strength waned because of the corrupt government during the 500 years of the Reed dynasty, until finally she lost her sovereignty. Before you were born, he continued, the Japanese conquered our country by force of arms. The 5 ministers of the feudal government who sold out the country to the Japanese invaders in the year of Yusa, 1905, are now condemned as traitors. These traitors, however, could not sell the Korean spirit. The righteous volunteers fought with spears in hand against the Japanese marauders in order to win back the sovereignty of their country. The Independence Army, armed with matchlocks, fought to destroy the invaders. Sometimes the people rose in revolt, cheering and throwing stones at the Japanese invaders, and appealing to human conscience and international justice. Ko Ik Hwan was taken to Tsushima as a captive. But, as a protest, he refused to eat the enemy's food until he died, with honor. Ri Jun demonstrated her nation's true spirit of independence by ripping his own belly open before the representatives of the imperialist powers at an international peace conference. An Jung-gun demonstrated the mettle of the Koreans by shooting Ito Hirobumi to death at the Harbin station and cheering for independence. Even Kang Yu-gyu, who was in his 60s, threw a bomb at the Japanese Governor General Saito. Ri Jae-myung took revenge on traitor Ri Wan-young by stabbing him in the back. Min Rong-hyun, Ri Pom-jin, Hong Pom-sik, and other patriots called for the regaining of national sovereignty by committing suicide. At one time, a campaign was launched to pay back a loan of 13 million won, which Korea had received from Japan after the Russo-Japanese War. To this end, all the Korean males gave up smoking, and even Kim Kyo-jong joined the no smoking campaign. The women cut down their expenses on food and sold their trinkets. The girls offered articles they had prepared for their marriage. Rich men's servants, seamstresses, cake sellers, vegetable sellers, and even straw sandal sellers contributed their hard-earned pennies for the payment of the national debt. Nevertheless, Korea failed to maintain her independence. What is essential is to rouse all the Koreans to a determination to win back the lost sovereignty of their country and develop sufficient strength to repel the invaders. With an unshakable determination, you will be able to develop your strength, and if you develop your strength, you will be able to fully defeat even the strongest enemy. Bugga, leave that alone. If we are to recover our nation's sovereignty, we must rouse the people throughout the country to the struggle. But this cannot be done in a day or two. That is why I tell you to aim high. Bugga, you're up to no good, and I'm trying to read a book to people. Do you understand that? My father used to tell me these things from the days when he would lead me by the hand up and down Myeongyang Hill. Everything he said was permeated with patriotism. Look at this thing. Look at her. Chat. She's up to no good. Are you, Bugga? Tell them what you're doing here. Bug. Tell them what you're up to. Don't lie to them, Bugga. Don't you lie to them, Bugga. Are you thinking about doing the bad thing right now, Bugga? Everybody say, Bugga, no bugging. That's what I need right now. Maybe then, he will behave down here. Bugga, no bugging. She's never done anything wrong in her life, she told me. Hey, Bugga, no bugging.
liberal.
Oh.
Liberal. Happy fun, la la la. Human smuggling fentanyl gas. Happy fun, la la la. Human smuggling fentanyl gas. Liberal. Happy fun, la la la. Human smuggling fentanyl gas.
DJ Mule, welcome in.
Human smuggling fentanyl gas. Liberal.
Everybody say hi to Bug. Bug. Say hi to them. This is Bugga. Everybody say hi to Bug. DJ Mule rated us, Bug. It's funny, I feel like you managed. I've got my raid alerts set to random, so I guess you should be congratulated for somehow. Feels like you always activate that one. Welcome in, DJ Mule Raiders.
What's happening on this planet, y'all?
Good to see y'all. I hope the stream was good. Make sure y'all go follow my comrade DJ Mule here on the Twitch. I'm Leaping Larry. I talk about communism and things like that. Believe we all will win. Let's go. Good to see us. I hope the stream over there was good, DJ. And if you're not following, make sure you go follow. I like to pop in there in the morning. You start kind of close to when I start, but I like to come in and hear some of the British news before I start my own stream. Bugga, stop your trouble. Would you? Look, it's going over this way. We are just reading from Kim Il Sung's on the Century, which is Kim Il Sung's reminiscences of his life. So, maybe you don't know much about DPRK. Maybe you don't know much about the history. I think reading about Kim Il Sung's life is always a good way to maybe contrast what you think you know about DPRK and be able to realize like what existed there in reality and what those revolutionaries, those Korean comrades fought against. So get in, get comfy, and I'm gonna read to you some more from this. We're just learning about Korea and Kim Il Sung's father's policy and motto of aim high. I'll read this paragraph here that we left off on, because this is a banger one here. Nevertheless, Korea failed to maintain her independence. What is essential is to rouse all the Koreans to determination to win back the lost sovereignty of their country and develop sufficient strength to repel the invaders. With an unshakable determination, you will be able to develop your strength. And if you develop your strength, you will be fully able to defeat even the strongest enemy. If we are to recover our nation's sovereignty, we must rouse the people throughout the country to the struggle. But this cannot be done in a day or two. That is why I tell you to aim high. My father used to tell me these things from the days when he would lead me by the hand up and down Mangyung Hill. Everything he said was permeated with patriotism. Once my father said to my grandparents, "What is the use of living if I cannot win my country's independence? Even if I am to be torn to pieces, I must fight and defeat the Japanese. If I fall in battle, my son will continue the fight. If my son cannot accomplish the cause, my grandson must fight until we win our nation's independence." Later, I remembered these words. When the anti-Japanese armed struggle, which I had believed we would win in 3 or 4 years, dragged on. as I lived through the long years of tragedy caused by national division after liberation. The division that compelled the North and the South to take opposite courses. I reminded myself of my father's profound words. What he said always reflected this idea of aim high, his conviction and his thought and aspiration for national liberation. In spite of my family's poverty, my father went to Sung Sil Middle School with a strong resolve to achieve his idea of aim high. During the period of little more than a decade, from the reform of the year of Cabo, 1894, to the signing of the treaty, the year of Yusa, 1905, a lot of work was being done to establish a modern educational system, though belatedly, on the strength of the trend towards political reform in our country. At the time when Seoul, Paji Haktang, Ria Haktang, Yukyung Kunwang, and similar schools were being set up to teach Western culture, Sung Sil Middle School was established in West Korea by American missionaries as part of their religious effort. This school took pupils from all parts of the country. Many young people who wished to receive modern education came to the school. History, algebra, geometry, physics, hygiene, physiology, physical training, music, and other subjects of modern education offered by Sung Sil Middle School attracted the young people who wished to eliminate national backwardness and advance in step with the New World trend. My father said that he attended this school in order to receive a modern education. He had no desire to learn the difficult 9 Chinese classics that had been taught at Confucian schools. Apart from the educational aims set by the missionaries, the Sung Sil Middle School produced many renowned patriots who, in subsequent years, worked hard for the national independence movement. For instance, Sun Yong-do, who became the first vice chairman and then the chairman of the political council of the Korean Provisional Government in Shanghai, came from this school. Cha Ri-suk, who was a member of the state council of the provisional government towards its closing years, was educated at the school. Yan Tuk-ju, a talented patriotic poet, also attended it, but left early. Kang Rang-uk, who too attended the specialized course of Sung Sil School. In those days, the specialized course was called the Sung Sil College. Sung Sil Middle School meant the secondary course of the school in those days. The Japanese called the school the source of anti-Japanese thought, because it produced so many fighters for independence against the Japanese. Learn to read and write for Korea's sake. Learn technology also for Korea's sake. Believe in a Korean God, if you believe in one. My father used to say to his schoolmates as he rallied the young patriots and the pupils together. Under his guidance, a reading circle and a single-hearted friendship association were formed at Sung Sil Middle School. These associations inculcated patriotism in the pupils and, at the same time, worked hard to enlighten the popular masses in Pyongyang and the surrounding area. In December 1912, they organized a school strike against the inhumane treatment and exploitative practices perpetrated by school authorities. During the school holidays, my father used to travel around Anju, Kangdong, Sunan, Uji, and other places in North and South Pyongyang provinces and Honghe province, enlightening the masses and recruiting comrades. The greatest achievement made by my father at Sung Sil Middle School was to find many comrades with whom he could share life and death. That's right, Mumis. Comrades. Many of his classmates were not only friends of my father, but also ready to take up the common cause with him, in order to shape the destiny of the country and the nation. They were all young men with foresight and high reputation, men of great ability, wide knowledge, and outstanding personality. Ri Po-sik was one of them. He came from Pyongyang and participated in the work of the Reading Circle and of the Single-Hearted Friendship Association, made a major contribution to the formation of the Korean National Association, and played a significant role in the March 1st popular uprising. When we were living in Pronghwa-ri, many times he visited my father, who was teaching at Mungsin School. Among my father's classmates from North Pyongyang Province was a man named Pak Si-bin, or Pak Young-mu, from Pyongyang. When my father was traveling around North Pyongyang Province, Pak Si-bin frequently served as his guide. He was an overseas correspondent of the Korean National Association. When the Great Council for Independent National Reunification was formed in South Korea in December 1960, Pak Si-bin worked as its member. Pak In-gwon stayed in the same hostel as my father in their days at Sangsu Middle School. For some time after he began attending the school, my father stayed at the hostel. While teaching at Kangsong School in Yunryol, Gyeonggi Province in the spring of 1917, Pak In-gwon joined the Korean National Association. While out rallying comrades in Sunghwa, Jiring, Haeju, and other places, he was arrested by the Japanese police and sent to Haeju prison for a year. Compositions written by his pupils at Kwangsan School under the title The Peninsula in Relation to Us are even now on exhibition at the Yunryol Museum of Revolutionary Activities. These compositions provide a glimpse of the ideological trend and the spiritual world of the pupils of the school, which was under the influence of the Korean National Association. Of all the independence fighters, of Oh Tong-jin was the most intimate with my father. It was in my father's days at Sangsil Middle School that Oh Tong-jin would visit our house frequently. He was then attending Pyongyang Taesong School that had been established by An Chang-ho. Since they were not only on friendly terms, but also in ideological harmony, they were sincerely and ardently associated with each other from the start, like a Marx-Engels situation. It was at the athletics meeting held on military drill grounds at Kongsanggol in the spring of 1910 that Oh Tong-jin first sympathized with my father's opinions. So I was told. The athletics meeting was attended by more than 10,000 young people and pupils from Pyongyang, Pakchon, Kangso, Yeongju, and other places. At the debating contest, held at the end of the athletics meetings, my father became the focus of attention by claiming that our country should be modernized by our own efforts, in opposition to some pupils who asserted that if our country was to become a civilized country, it should adopt Japanese civilization. Among the audience was Oh Tong-jin, who later became the head of Yonggyo-bu. Whenever he recollected the event, Oh Tong-jin used to say with deep emotion, "Mr. Kim's speech that day made a great impression on me." In the guise of a trader from around 1913, he traveled around Seoul, Pyongyang, Sinuiju, and other major cities in the country, and to China, visiting my father whenever he had the opportunity to discuss the future of the independent movement. At first, I took him for an honest businessman. It was only when he had moved to Baedeogyo and Fusang that I learned he was an important fighter for the independence. Don't judge a book by its cover. By that time, he enjoyed such a high reputation that there was no one who did not know his name. Oh Tong-jin, alias Sungam, judging from his property status and background, he could afford to live comfortably, instead of taking the thorny path of revolution. but he took up arms and fought the Japanese. O Tong-jin respected my father highly and loved him dearly. Many people visited his home in Uji. The outbuilding of his house was wholly reserved for such visitors. He had so many visitors that he had to keep a cook exclusively for them. But he met my father in the main building, and the mistress of the house herself used to cook for my father. So I was told. Once O Tong-jin and his wife visited us. My grandmother gave them a brass bowl as a souvenir. I'm writing about him in great detail not only because he was a friend and a comrade of my father's, but also because he played an important part in my younger days. From my childhood, I felt greatly attached to him. He was arrested by the Japanese imperialists while I was studying in Jilin. Many years later, that is, in early March 1932, when I was traveling around Jiandao in order to organize the anti-Japanese People's Guerrilla Army, he was put on trial at the Shininju local court. I've been greatly surprised to hear that the record of Gandhi's preliminary examination amounted to as many as 25,000 pages. But I was told that the record of O Tong-jin's preliminary examination numbered as many as 35,000 pages, or 64 volumes. On the day of his trial, thousands of visitors thronged the court, with the result that the trial scheduled to begin early in the morning started at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Then he denied the power of the court and shook the room by jumping into the chief judge's seat and cheering for Korea's independence. The confused Japanese judges quickly suspended the trial and sentenced him without his even being present. At his appeal, he was sentenced to life imprisonment, but he died in prison without seeing the day of liberation. As we struggled to build up the guerrilla army, the press reported his trial, telling of his unstained honor and his unbreakable fighting spirit, and carrying a photograph of his being escorted in a prisoner's hood to Pyongyang's gaol. When I saw his photograph, I recollected his unbreakable patriotic spirit with deep emotion. Yeah, what amazing, amazing. So he was sentenced in the court, and he said, "I don't accept this Japanese court," and he jumped in the judge's seat and banged the gavel and went, "I'm free," or Korean independence, Korean independence. And then, of course, he was sentenced without any real trial, and then at his appeal was sentenced to life imprisonment. Hero. Not that I would condone it. He looked like a badass, though, is all I'm saying. Yeah. Many of my father's close friends in his Sungsu middle school days became stalwart revolutionaries, and later formed the backbone of the Korean National Association. My father left Sungsu Middle School early and began to teach at Sunhwa School in Myeongdae, and then at Mungsin School in Kangdong, applying himself to the education of the younger generation and to rallying his comrades. He explained that he had left middle school with a view of concentrating on the practical struggle due to the extending the theater of the revolutionary activities. During a school holiday in 1916, he toured Jiandao in northeast China. I do not know whom he got in touch with there, but he went to Shanghai from Jiandao, and there he contacted Sun Yat-sen Nationalist Revolutionary Group. Oh, what? Sun Yat-sen mentioned, chat. My father had a high regard for Sun Yat-sen as a forerunner of the bourgeois democratic revolution in China. My father said that in China, the men's pigtails had disappeared, and weekly holidays introduced through the efforts of bourgeois reformists. In particular, my father spoke highly of the three principles of the people, the nation, and the people's rights and the people's life, proposed by Sun Yat-sen as the program for the Chinese Revolutionary Coalition, the Alliance Society, and of his new three-point policy of alliance with the Soviet Union, alliance with communism, and assistance to the working class and peasantry, which had been formulated under the influence of the May 4th movement. He said that Sun Yat-sen was a revolutionary of large caliber, strong will, and foresight. But he added that Sun Yat-sen had been mistaken when he had conceded the office of the Generalissimo Yuan Shikai after the establishment of the Republic of China, on condition that the establish of a republican system and remove the Qing emperor. Amazing that we're getting the Sun Yat-sen mentioned because if you're not familiar, the KMT party right now, that's where she went, right? The new KMT leader, when she traveled to China, what the KMT is looking back to with this traveling to China, they're sort of turning away from the Chiang Kai-shek period and looking at Sun Yat-sen as like really the founder of the KMT and what they want to bring the KMT back to. Not only is there so much happening at this time, GMO, but at the same time, it's amazing how large the world is, but also how connected it is, right? Like Kim Il-sung's father meeting Sun Yat-sen. You know what I mean? Like, and it shows you like how connected these revolutionary movements were. In my boyhood, I often heard my father talking about the bourgeois reformist movement in Korea. He greatly regretted the failure of the coup in the years of Kapsin, 1884, led by Kim Il-sung, who remained in power for only 3 days, and said that his policy of human equality, the abolition of the caste system, and the promotion of able people that had been formulated in his reformist program of the Enlightenment Party, as well as his idea of independence that suggested the renunciation of dependence on the Qing dynasty, was all progressive. Judging from what my father said, I realized that Kim Il-sung was a preeminent figure, and that if his reformist movement had succeeded, the modern history of Korea might have been different. It was much later that we discovered the limitations in Kim Il-sung's reformist movement and its program, and analyzed them from the point of view of Juche. Most of my teachers in Korean history regarded Kim Il-sung as pro-Japanese. The academic circles of our country after liberation labeled him as pro-Japanese for a long time because he had received help from the Japanese in his preparations for the coup. But we did not consider this estimation of the reformists to be fair. I told our historians that, although he was wrong to neglect the link between his movement and the popular masses, assessing him as pro-Japanese simply because he had drawn on the strength of Japan would lead to nihilism. That the aim of his use of Japanese forces was not to effect pro-Japanese reforms, but to turn the balance of forces of those days in favor of the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment Party, on the basis of the meticulous calculation of the balance, and that such tactics were inevitable in the situation in this time. And again, without him serving that role, would the revolution as it was been able to emerge, right? Which is why I say it is in some ways important that we do have comrades working on all of these different fronts, on all these different avenues, trying all these different means. And us Marxist-Leninists have our program understanding what we must do and try and grow our organization. with as many with as many conscious revolutionaries as possible that can also spread consciousness among the masses and rally them to her cause. Dr. Sun was so smart that he received an award for academic achievement from King Kalakaua and was studying in Hawaii. That's amazing. See, it's so amazing how connected like the anti-imperialist struggle ends up being when you look at it. It's like I always tell the story of Thomas Sankara's pistol grip, his pearl grip pistols, right? Famous twin pistols that Thomas Sankara carried everywhere with him, including to New York. And those pistols were given to him by Kim Il-sung. Remained his favorite pistols his entire life. My father said that Kim Il-kyun had failed in his attempted coup, mainly because the reformists relied only on their supporters within the court, instead of believing in the forces of the popular masses, and that we must learn a lesson from his failure. Yeah, he pulls them out. In New York, he even pulls one out and like shows it as part of his talk. And that gun that he holds up in New York at that meeting or whatever, the one he shows, that's what it's from. That speech that he gave. My father toured Jiandao and Shanghai to obtain a first-hand knowledge of the independence movement abroad, of which he had heard rumors, recruiting new comrades and defining his policies and strategies for the subsequent years. Judging from the international situation in those days, the national liberation struggles in the colonies were not fully developed. The mode and method of the independence movements in the colonies had yet to be evolved. When my father was visiting Jiandao and Shanghai, the Chinese Revolution was experiencing difficulties on account of the insidious maneuvers of the warlords and intervention by imperialist powers. The United States, Britain, Japan, and other foreign forces created major problems for the Chinese Revolution. In spite of this, many of the independence fighters in exile harbored illusions about the imperialists and wasted their time on empty talk about seeking aid from some of the major powers. The situation in Jiandao reaffirmed my father's belief that Korea's independence should be achieved by Koreans themselves. After his visit to Jiandao, my father worked day and night to enlighten the masses and recruit comrades. By the time our family had moved from Mangyeongdae to Pyongyang-ri, Kangdong, by that time, our family had moved from Mangyeongdae to Pyongyang-ri, Kangdong, where he taught at Myeongsing School during the daytime and enlightened the masses at night school, as he had done in Mangyeongdae. In a literary exercise at school, I made a speech against the Japanese, from a composition prepared for me by my father. In those days, he composed revolutionary poems and songs, and enthusiastically taught them to his pupils. Many independence fighters visited my father at Pyongyang-ri. He himself traveled frequently around North and South Pyongyang provinces and Honghe province to visit his comrades. In the course of this, hardcore elements were trained, and a mass foundation for the independence movement was laid. On the basis of these preparations, he and other patriotic independence fighters such as Jang Gi-hwan, Pae In-sung, and Pak Si-bin formed the Korean National Association at Ri Post 6 House at Hangtokgol, Pyongyang on March 23rd, 1917. The beginning of a legend. The Korean members of the association cut their fingers and wrote Korea's independence, and resolved to give our lives with their blood. The Korean National Association was a secret organization with the aim of achieving national independence and establishing a truly modern state through the efforts of a unified Korean nation. It was one of the largest anti-Japanese revolutionary underground organizations of Korean patriots at home or abroad at the time of the March 1st popular uprising. In 1917, there were not many clandestine organizations in Korea. By that time, the Independence Volunteers, the Great Korea Liberation Corps, the Korea Sovereignty Recovery Groups, and similar organizations had been formed after the annexation and had all been disbanded under repression of Japanese imperialists. Because underground fighters were indiscriminately arrested, ordinary people dared not to think of joining them in their activities. The situation was such that even those who were determined to fight for independence were compelled to leave the country and form anti-Japanese organizations abroad. People who were brave enough to do this engaged in moderate activities at home, with the permission of the government general, without offending the Japanese. It was in this situation that the Korean National Association was born. It was a revolutionary organization that stood firmly against imperialism and for independence. Its manifesto stated that, in view of the clear evidence that European and American forces were heading east, and that they would soon rival Japan for hegemony, the association must, by taking advantage of their rivalry, promote the rallying of the masses and preparations for achieving Korea's independence through the efforts of the Korean people. As is clear from the manifesto, the Korean National Association, unlike those who pinned their hopes on foreign forces, adopted the independent stand that Korea's independence should be won by Korean people themselves. The Korean National Association drew up great plans for sending its members to Jiandao and developing that area into a strategic base for the independence movement. The association had a closely knit network of organizations. It admitted to its membership only well-prepared, tested, and well-selected patriots. Had an organizational system and worked from top to bottom and used code words for communications between its members. Its secret documents were compiled in code. It planned to hold a general meeting of its members every year on the day of starting a new school year at Sungsil Middle School. It was thoroughly concealed by means of such lawful fringe organizations as the School Association, the Stone Monument Association, and the Hometown Association. It had area leaders under it, and posted correspondence to Beijing and Dandong for the purpose of liaison with people working abroad. The association had a solid mass foundation. It drew its membership from among the workers, peasants, teachers, students, soldiers of the Independence Army, shopkeepers, religious believers, and artisans. People from all walks of life. Its organizational network spread throughout the country and even reached Beijing, Shanghai, Jilin, Fusong, Lianjiang, Changbei, Lihue, Quandian, Dandong, Huadian, and Xinjiang in China. In the course of forming the building up of the Korean National Association, my father recruited many new comrades such as Jang Cho-ho, Kang Hee-ha, and Kang Jin-gon and Kim Si-yu, who would be impossible to describe them all in painstaking effort made by my father in order to discover them. He did not mind walking hundreds of miles if it was to meet a comrade. O Tong-jing, on his way to Hanghi province one day, called unexpectedly on my father. He looked handsomer than usual and made a great impression on me. He boasted that he found a fine man. Quote, he was a young man named Kang Yong, living in Pyeongtaek, O Tong-jin said. He is well informed, 9 feet tall, and handsome. Being a man of composure and skillful at Kultsu, the art of self-defense, he would have made a good defense minister if he was living in the feudal age. Delighted by the news, my father remarked, "From olden times, someone who recommended a good man has been more appreciated than the services of the good man himself. So your recent visit to Pukdong has been of great benefit to our movement." When O Tong Jin left, my father asked my uncle to make a few pairs of straw sandals. The next day, he put on a pair and set out on a journey. He returned home before a month had passed. He'd walked such a long way that his sandals had worn almost to shreds. Nevertheless, he was smiling as he entered through the brushwood gate and showed no sign of fatigue. My father was extremely satisfied with his interview with Kong Young. In my boyhood, I learned from my father the ethics of comradeship. The Korean National Association was the result of many years of my father's energetic organization and propaganda activities at home and abroad after the annexation. He planned to build up the movement on a large scale on the strength of the organization. But the organization was put down harshly by the Japanese imperialists. In the autumn of 1917, the enemy discovered a clue concerning the organization. On Windy Day, 3 policemen fell upon my father as he taught at Mungsin School and arrested him. Mr. Ho, who had followed my father as far back as Mungjeon Ferry, hurried back to my mother with a secret message from him. My mother, as my father had written in the message, climbed up to the attic and came down with some secret papers, which she destroyed in the kitchen fire. From the day following my father's arrest, the Christians living in Panghwa-ri gathered at Mungsin School every early morning and prayed for his release. People from Pyongyang, Kangdong, and the surrounding area swarmed to Pyongyang police station with petitions for his release. On hearing that my father was soon to be put on trial, my grandfather at Mungyeongdae sent my uncle to the police station. He wanted to know whether my father wished to have a lawyer to defend him at the trial or not. When my uncle said that he would find the money to hire a lawyer by selling some household goods, my father flatly refused. A lawyer speaks with his mouth, and I can do the same. So there is no need to waste money on a lawyer.
That will change your whole way of thinking.
Thank you for the sub, EPA. An innocent man does not need a lawyer to defend him. The Japanese imperialists tried my father 3 times at the Pyongyang local court. Each time my father protested against the trial, saying, "How can it be a crime for a Korean to love his country and to work for it? I cannot recognize this unwarranted examination by the authorities." As a result, the trial dragged on. At the 3rd trial, the Japanese imperialists sentenced him to a term in prison. After my father's imprisonment, Uncle Rung Hyuk and my second uncle on my mother's side, Kang Hwang Suk, came to Panghwa-ri to take us to Mungyeongdae. But my father said that she would remain in Panghwa-ri through the winter. She wanted to remain there in order to get in touch with the members of the Korean National Association and the other anti-Japanese fighters who might visit there, and to resolve any problems caused by my father's arrest. After dealing with all such problems, my mother took us to Mungyeongdae in the spring of the following year. My 2 grandfathers came to Panghwa-ri with a cart to carry away our household goods. For me, the spring and summer of that year were miserable. Whenever I asked my mother when father would return, she would answer that he would return soon. One day, she took me to the swing park on Mungyeong Hill. As she sat on the swings holding me in her arms, she said, "Jung son, the ice floes on the river Taedong have melted away, and the trees have produced green leaves, but your father hasn't returned home. He was fighting to win back his country. How can that be a crime? You must grow up quickly and take revenge on the enemy for your father. You must grow up to be a hero and win back the country." I answered that I would do so come what may. After that, she visited the prison many times, without my knowledge, but she said nothing about it when she returned home. One day, she took me in the direction of the city, saying that she was going to Falgol to have her cotton ginned. She left the cotton at her mother's house in Chilgol on the way, asking her mother to have it ginned, and then took me to Pyongyangul. My grandmother told her daughter to go without me, saying that a child too young to understand the world should not see a prison. If I saw my father behind bars, how frightened I should be. She was dead against her taking me to the prison. At the time, I was 6 years old. On crossing the wooden bridge over the River Pathong, I recognized the prison building. Nobody had told me what a prison looked like, but I could judge it from its unnatural shape and from the dreary atmosphere of its surroundings. The exterior of the prison building was forbidding and dreadful enough to terrify people. The iron gate, high wall, watchtower, and bars, as well as the black uniforms of the guards, and their sharp glances were all menacing. The visitor's room was dim, screened from the sunshine. The air in the room was thick and oppressive. Even in such an atmosphere, my father was smiling as usual. He was delighted to see me, and praised my mother for having taken me with her. The gaunt face of my father, who wore prison clothes, defied instant recognition. His face, neck, hands, feet, and the rest of his body were scarred and wounded. Despite his condition, however, he was worrying about the safety of his family at home. His imposing and dignified bearing inspired me with an irresistible feeling of pride, mixed with a grievance and hatred for the enemy. You've grown up. Obey your elders at home, and be good at your schoolwork, he said to me in his usual tone of voice, calm and composed, without so much as glancing at the warden. The sound of his voice brought tears to my eyes. I said in a loud voice, "Yes, please come home soon, Father." He nodded with satisfaction. He asked my mother to help the brush sellers and comb sellers who might occasionally come to visit her. By these, he meant his comrades in the revolution. His indomitable image that day left a lasting impression on me. I saw Ri Quan Rin in the visitor's room, and that also made an unforgettable impression on me. She was a student of art at the Pyongyang Girls' High School and a member of the Korean National Association. It was fortunate that she had been arrested by the police. She would come to her classmate and fellow member of the association to see my father. It was strange in those days when feudal customs prevailed for a girl to visit a political prisoner. Things were such that if her visit to the prison were generally known, no man would marry her. Even the wardens were surprised to see the smart, modern girl visiting a political prisoner, and treated her with caution. With a bright face, she consoled my father and my mother. My visit to my father in prison was a great event for me. I understood why my mother had taken me with her to the prison. The physical wounds to my father made me feel to the marrow of my bone how fiendish the Japanese imperialism. Those wounds gave me a much more real and visual image of Japanese imperialism than the image provided by the numerous statesmen and historians through their analysis and assessment of it. Until that time, I had not really experienced the atrocities perpetrated by the Japanese army and police. I had seen some Japanese policemen in Myeongdae who had come to take a consensus or inspect the cleaning and found fault with one thing or the other, and in the end slashed the door of the kitchen of my house with a whip and broken the lid of the cooking pot. But never had I seen them inflicting such appalling wounds upon an innocent person. The wounds remained in my mind throughout the period of my revolutionary struggle against the Japanese. The shock I had received on that visit still has a strong effect on me. In the autumn of 1918, my father was released after completing his term in prison. My uncle and my grandfather went to the prison with a litter, and the villagers waited for my father at the fork of the Sangri that leads to Mangyeongdae. With wounds from the beatings all over his body, my father tottered out through the prison gate. My grandfather, trembling with indignation, told my father to lie down on the litter. "I will walk. How can it be carried on a litter under the eyes of the enemy? I will walk to spite the enemy," my father said, walking boldly forward. Back home, my father said to his brothers, "In prison, I even drank as much water as I could, out of my determination to survive and fight to the end. How can I leave unpunished the Japanese, who are the worst of living creatures? Young Rock and Young Gung, you too must fight the Japanese. The enemy must be made to pay for our blood, even if we must die." Listening to him, I resolved to follow my father in the fight to destroy the Japanese imperialists. My father read books even in his sickbed. To convalesce, he stayed for some time with his aunt's husband, Kim Sung-hyun, an ophthalmologist, and there he continued with his medical studies, which he started in prison. From Kim Suk-hyun, my father obtained many books on medicine. Earlier in his Sungsil middle school days, my father had learned medicine from the doctor, and read medical books enthusiastically at home. It was in prison that my father made up his mind to change from a teacher to a doctor. Even before I had completely recovered, my father went on a journey to North Gyeongsang Province, resolved to restore the disputed organization of the Korean National Association. My grandfather encouraged him to stick to his cause until it was accomplished. Prior to his departure, my father composed a poem, "The Green Pine Tree on Nam Hill." The poem expressed his firm resolve to bring a new spring of independence to the silk-embroidered land of 3,000 ri by fighting on, even if he were to be torn to pieces. That brings us to the end of Chapter 2.